Hi, and welcome to the X22Report Spotlight. Today we have two guests, V and CJ, the producer from RogueMoney.net. You can see them on Rogue Money on their YouTube channel. You can see them on Twitter, the Rogue Money, and they're on many different platforms like Steemit. You can see them there. I want to welcome both of you guys to the X22Report Spotlight. CJ, V, welcome to the Spotlight.
Dave, it's great to be back.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. It was a lot of fun.
Really happy to have you back. And let's start off, and my mind's spinning right now because there's just so many things happening all at once. But I wanted to start off with this whole Russian collusion, the 13 indictments, and where you think we are. Now, Mueller, which is very interesting, came out with the 13 indictments during this whole Parkland shooting, which they were able to plaster this right on the corporate media, well, CNN and many others. And, you know, the Russian collusion thing, they're still mentioning it, but it's kind of dying to the side here a little bit. But Mueller, he's still trying to push things out there, and the corporate media, they're just, you know, going with it as, you know, like it's incredible. The 13 indictments that he came out with, do they add up to anything, or are they really that important, or is it just another nothing burger?
There's two ways of looking at it. The first way is it's a nothing burger. It's a nothing burger in the sense that, will it get Donald Trump indicted? Will it cause him to be impeached? Will it cause him to be removed from office? No. There's no crime that can. I mean, we're almost 2 years into this, 18 months into this whole entire Russia collusion nonsense, and they can't find nothing. But what they are finding, and what these 13 indictments do show, is, again, more collusion, not with Trump and Russia, but with DNC actors, the Democratic National Committee, Hillary Clinton, anti-Trump protests like these fake Black Lives Matter sites that were created by these by Russian actors. And again, these are Russian actors. Does not mean that they're somehow connected to Vladimir Putin or officially in any capacity to the Russian government. It just happens. Some people do these stupid things, and, you know, look, everybody gets the Nigerian prince email every so often, so it doesn't mean it's connected to the Nigerian government. Okay, so it's the same thing. So it's really nothing. And again, the things that are pulled, with the few legitimate names that are being pulled out of there, are, again, people that are connected with the Democratic Party, that are connected with Hillary Clinton, that are connected with the Hillary Foundation. That's what's being called with this 13. And it's also pretty funny that prior to this 13, a few months ago, if you remember, there were 11. So why is it that, you know, here's the funny thing. You know, I look at these numbers that always stand out to me, these funny numbers that are always pushed to the forefront. Several months ago, it was 11 indictments. And any one of you that are fans of numerology or occultism would know that 11 is a significant number. It signifies, it foretells, it identifies a specific, identity or signal to those that are in the know. Same thing with 13. Okay, this time it's 13. So, you know, I think there is something going on. The Mueller investigation, it's pretty funny because this is, again, an anti-Trump investigation. But what it's finding is more and more Hillary Clinton. At the same time, it's dying down. And I think the corporate media is starting to sense that. Hence, all of a sudden, you know, this whole rallying cry behind this very suspicious event in Florida, Dave.
Yes, I mean, I agree with you. And do you think they brought the indictments out on purpose during this shooting just so they could plaster it up there? I mean, it didn't really matter if people actually, you know, read it or anything. They just had a headline. You think they did that on purpose?
Yeah, I think it's very curious, the timing of this event. And I think what it did in part, Dave, is it gravitated everyone to be so plugged in to the mainstream media, you know, waiting for the next round of information to come out. And then boom, they kind of sneak out this, oh, by the way, you know, here are the 13 indictments. The media jumped, you know, all over it. And you're exactly right. People, today's society, are all about, you know, the one-line post, you know, what the headline is. It's amazing the amount of time that people do not take, including the media, to actually read the material. So prior to, you know, even reading the indictments, the media was already, you know, really hyping up regarding the Trump, you know, Russia collusion. They didn't take the time to actually read the indictments, to actually expose that it reveals exactly what V just stated, that this points out even more collusion between the DNC, between these deep state operatives and these 13 Russians. In fact, it's forcing social media giants like Facebook, you know, Twitter, to come out and say, yeah, you're right. Majority of these ads that were paid were probably more half in support of Hillary. And by the way, the ads that they purchased were like less than 0.01% of total ads purchased during that time. Yep. And the ads were purchased, Dave, after the election. So it's pretty obvious what's happening here.
Yeah, and what's funny about all of this is that they're really not comparing this to anything. They're just saying, "Oh, look what Russia, these trolls, look what they did. They impersonated people. They put the ads out there." But if you compared this with maybe China, Saudi Arabia, and the rest of the world that are probably doing the same exact thing, you would see that, oh, look, everyone is doing this. Everyone is trying to push their personal agenda by trying to, maybe place an ad or something. But it doesn't mean there's Russian collusion. It doesn't mean that they actually had an effect on anything. It just means that they were trying to do this. I mean, compared to the United States, that goes into other countries and actually brings in the armed forces, removes the elected leader, hangs the elected leader, and places the puppet government in the position.
And one other point that I'll just make real quick is that when they push the narrative regarding Russia meddling, and then they talk about, the hacking and the viruses, I really think that the bigger goal, the bigger picture, Dave, is to really take a look at the election systems. You've covered it, Rogue covered it in regards to the Department of Homeland Security and their attempts to hack in to certain states. I believe it was Indiana, Florida. During the election, we had these state attorney generals saying, "Hey, you owe us an explanation. Why did you try to, penetrate our election system?" I think there's a bigger play here, Dave. They're looking down the road. I think what they're wanting to do is to bring the election system, the state system, remove it from the states, bring it under more of an element of national security, therefore warranting the DHS to monitor and effectively control the elections and potentially the outcomes, Dave.
No, I agree with you. I think that was their major plan. What's very interesting about you bringing DHS up, they just did an internal investigation. They investigated themselves. And they said, oh, yeah, we didn't hack into anyone's election system. It wasn't us. And, of course, when you investigate yourself and you put out a report, of course, you're not going to find anything. I mean, that's just ridiculous on how they do this.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the Attorney General's office in the state of Georgia has a completely different story in regards to what the DHS is claiming. And they got the proof to show it, that it was, in fact, the DHS tried to breach the Georgia electoral offices over there, and they're trying to figure out why. So these idiots they're just that stupid. You see, this is what happens when power. The problem with power, when power is power for such a long time, power gets stupid. You get real dumb. Power is basically what happens when it just lasts a little too long, Dave. They are the equivalent of walking in a hall of smoke and mirrors. They just begin to see and visualize their own BS, and they fail to see the very things, the very accoutrements that are about to take them down. They never see it coming. History always repeats itself. These people always seem that they're somehow exempt from that fact.
I think they think that when they do these type of things, false flags or anything that they're doing, that they're covered because the corporate media is going to push out the narrative of what they want. They're going to push the propaganda as hard as they possibly can. And if this news station says it and this news station says it and this one says it, it's got to be true. And, until the alternative media came out, which I think in the beginning with the alternative media, I didn't think they thought that they were going to be anything to worry about, and they weren't going to really have much of a sway in what the public thought and things like that. And I think as time went on, the alternative media got bigger and bigger, and the alternative media was actually asking questions and questioning everything that they were doing. And people started to think and started to say, well, wait a minute. Yeah, this doesn't make sense. I mean, it's almost like the Parkland shooting, where people are starting to ask a lot of questions. Okay, who is this kid, David Hogg? Why did this Nicholas Cruz? Why did the FBI never do anything? Really? He bought 10 different rifles? How is this possible? I mean, all these different type of things. He brought it into school. Nobody saw a thing. The whole thing, doesn't make sense.
AR-15s are so small, you could, put them in your pants and walk around without any issues, Dave. Look at the Las Vegas shooter. He had a whole arsenal in his pants, and nobody saw nothing.
But what's funny about all this? They always don't say, oh, the person had one weapon. They always say he had the one weapon, which is an AR-15, and then he had, 12 other pistols, 15 other rifles, and thousands of rounds of ammunition, because they have to make it bigger than life.
Oh, yeah. And this 80-pound kid is all of a sudden turns into a Green Beret Rambo type figure and is able to, fire and reload a semi-automatic so fast that it's just beyond description.
Absolutely true. Now, just continuing on with Parkland and what happened there, everything that you've been looking at, you believe this is a false flag?
There's so many inconsistencies with the reporting, Dave. And now we're starting to get information. This has all the elements of a Soros-based, kind of like the Women's March, right? So now the MSM is parading these same kids around, these same students who, by the way, Dave, they started recording actual interviews during like less than probably 5 to 7 minutes after the apparently shooting began, where this character, is it Hodge? Hobb was specifically stating, oh, by the way, we think it's this Cruz character that's doing it. Well, how's that possible? I mean, Cruz apparently had been expelled from school, I believe, for quite some period of time. And he's actually naming him in interviews that he's conducting during a shooting. It just stinks to high heaven, Dave, of what's happening. And I tell you what,
also,
yeah, go ahead.
The fact that also, CJ, that Hobb never went to Parkland. Hobb, an Antifa, some classmate of his, who went to a high school in Pasadena, California, put up the yearbook picture of David Hobb graduating last year from high school in Pasadena, California. So how's this kid? He's there twice, and then he was there on another shooting event in California, near the beach, and now he pops up in Florida. Like, he is. It stinks to high heaven. It reminds me of the whole Sandy Hook thing, where you had supposed kids who died in Sandy Hook, and again, their images of the same kids with the same name is being used multiple times in multiple school shootings in multiple locations throughout the world, not just the United States. I mean, this is a fact. We are being gamed. It is a total op.
One thing that I found very suspicious right off the bat is in Florida, schools usually have either one or two BSO officers, which is the Broward Sheriff Officer, on campus. Now, elementary schools, those schools are locked down. There's one point of entry, and all schools are surrounded by fences. The high schools, they are not your traditional high schools like you see, up north, where you have, big buildings and everything is inside. This is more of like a small community college where there's multiple buildings surrounded by a fence, but you can come and go as you want. And most of these high schools have the BSO officer, especially Parkland. It's a very wealthy area, very safe area. And what I found very interesting, these two individuals, or even if there's just one there, heard the gunshot and did nothing. But what we come to find out is on the same day that this was happening, and of course we know that there were drills going on at the same exact time. Teachers, students have told us, that yes, we were expecting a drill. They were having a drill today. And this officer, or both officers, they were called off campus at this moment. So they left the campus and they were not there. These are armed individuals, which I find very interesting, because if they were on campus, what idiot would come onto campus with two armed officers with weapons and bring a weapon there? Something didn't make sense right off the bat.
And the fact that there are kids on camera who have been caught saying, we don't know. We thought this was fake. We thought it was part of a drill, because there was a drill scheduled for that day.
Yes. There was.
It's the hallmark of the deep state over and over again, and they expect to fool us. And apart from the brain dead, all this is doing. You're having an entire swath of the population who are being red pilled right now, because these people are not watching CNN. Apart from those that are in retirement homes and in hospices, those are the only ones that are watching CNN and whatnot, and those that are in the brain dead of the left coast. The rest of the country is getting red pill. The rest of the country is moving to the internet. They're searching out for themselves the whole entire thing about the shooting thing, and they're awakening themselves. They're understanding. Wait a minute, there's something deeper at play here. This whole entire, again, the push for gun control. This is not going to do anything for gun control. This is not going to do anything to stop arms. In fact, now the conversation turned around to SSRIs, the psychotropic drugs. This is the conversation is being turned to why do we have these stupid gun-free zones, which does nothing for anyone? And why don't teachers have concealed carries at this point? You know, liberal leftism is failing miserably in a big way. Big way.
I see they're continually pushing it. I mean, if you flip on CNN and you hear what's going on, I mean, there's marches going on, there's vigils going on, and they're talking a lot.
I got the ads and I pasted it on my Twitter account. Advertisements asking for paid protesters anywhere between $75 to $110.
Wow.
Yep.
So
get paid.
The name of the school is Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, and I found this very interesting. Actually, someone wrote into me who wanted to remain anonymous, but said if you look her up, you can see what she was actually doing during her period of time in Florida. She was an activist, a feminist. She also didn't want the swamps drained in Florida, in the Everglades. That was her main. I mean, I think this is unbelievable. Now, what is Trump doing right now? Her whole entire activist life was not to have the Everglades drained. To me, it sounds like they're sending a message.
Well, yeah. Right. On top of that, I mean, look at where's the name of the location that the school's in? Parkland, right? What was the name of the hospital where they took JFK's body? Right after he got shot in the head, Parkland. So yeah, this whole thing is a game. It's a massive psyop, and you have that kid David Hogg out there saying Trump's a bad guy, he's just a bad president, and the FBI is great. The FBI are just consummate professionals. They're the best I've ever seen, the hardest, smartest working guys. Unbelievable, and no one's. I don't know how far this kid and the deep state is thinking that they can push this, but they're trying hard, Dave.
They are. CJ, what do you think their overall agenda is with this event?
Well, I think, it's kind of twofold. Number one is obviously the Democratic Party, Dave. They have absolutely nothing, to stand on. They went ahead and they decided to go ahead and join with the recent budget that was passed. They took a lot of heat from their base. And then also, Dave, they have been shown that regarding this whole information regarding the Dreamers Act and the immigration reform, that they had nothing. They offered nothing to the House and the Senate. In fact, they actually blocked their own legislation from being debated. We witnessed some of these dreamers showing up at some of the DNC, some of the Democrats' homes and protesting. So I think this was a huge disruption from that, because we're not hearing about that anymore, right? No one's talking about the dreamers. So I think it was a great smokescreen, to that. And then the second part of it is, again, just another disruption to Donald J. Trump, the information that was coming out. It's intended to really catch and captivate the national audience. And regarding this, and right now it is. When you open up the news, that's all that people are talking about is this incident in Florida and gun control. So they have decided to try to regain and capture the narrative from the American people.
Do you think Trump is going to fold under this? I mean, he mentioned something about that piece of equipment that fits on the back of the AR-15 called a bump stock, where he's saying that should be maybe made illegal.
Right. Well, and Trump before has had a kind of a level set with the NRA. He's decided that, he does have some concerns in regards to, gun laws, background checks. And so do I. I think there does need to be proper, protocols put in place. I think the other thing you have to question or wonder about with Trump is that, he has heavily very influenced, with his daughter. She has his ear, and obviously, her being from New York and Jared, they have some very liberal opinions and biases. So it'll be very interesting. I think the safe place to be would be for Trump to go ahead and to look at potentially looking at this bump stock. And I think basically what it does is allows for semi-automatic weapons to go fully automatic is what it does, Dave. And so if you think of a need for that, one could question, and does Trump need to do something to silence the media, something to counter their discussions? We'll have to wait and see. But one thing's without a doubt is that there's a lot of political pressure for him right now to do something.
Do you think that, this is eventually going to die down? I mean, they can keep it going as long as they possibly can, but I think in the next, 4, 5, maybe 6 weeks, it's going to start to die off. And what else are you going to talk about? Do you think they're in line to do something else, or do you think the deep state, these individuals, they're just going to give up?
They'll give up. I mean, look, all this stuff is happening at such a very acute fashion, such an intensity, such an acute fashion. The reason why this is happening is because this is symptomatic of cornered animals, okay? And something is happening where the pressure is on. Now, it is a known fact that we can safely assume at this point, okay, we can safely establish at this point, not even assume, but we can safely establish at this point that the good guys have taken control of the surveillance and listening and data sweeping power of the NSA, okay? So with that being said, these guys that are able to triangulate better than the bad guys can. Okay, so the time will come. A lot recently, people talk about QAnon and all the revelations that have come out from the individual or the individuals that go under that moniker. That being said, one of the things that Q said in his latest posts is that we are accelerating the timeline. Now, CJ and I, we've been saying for quite some time, we want to see arrests. We want to see changes rapidly. Look, I have a problem, Dave. Okay, when I see Hillary Clinton frolicking around here and there, I have a problem when they take her out of her death chamber that she presides in, and they put her in front of the Emmy Awards or whatever, or what have you, some award ceremony where she's reading a book. I have a problem with that. I have a problem that John Brennan, ex-CIA, Mockingbird media guy, this guy transitions out of the CIA, and where does he take up roost? Well, he's over at NBC, nothing but crap. He's at the NBC. He's an NBC News correspondent now. I have a problem with these guys. I want to see them gone. And I'm hoping to God in the next several months we get to see something big. I'm hoping for that, Dave. CJ, good.
Yeah, that's my concern, Dave, and something that even we talked about as earlier this morning is just the timeline between whether it's the indictments, whether it's arrest. Every day, every month that passes by, you have to wonder and worry about what exactly the deep state is doing. And I think the Florida thing, again, not saying anything could have been done specifically with an arrest related thing, but it affords them that time to plan out their next stage. And I think there does need to be a little bit more, activity involved regarding either indictments, prosecutions. I'm glad that legislatively that they're going to, open investigations and all that. But I think that the people that supported and put Donald Trump in office, I think we're past that stage of wanting a special counsel, of wanting another investigation to drag things out. And it's time for Trump to really to get with Jeff Sessions. There's no reason why some of these players that have been involved with this, it's known fact, for them not to push for indictments, go ahead and prosecute, begin their arrest. I think the $1 million question is Jeffrey Sessions a deep state player? And is he there to help protect? I mean, I think that question is legitimately still there regarding Jeff Sessions.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned QAnon, and you mentioned that they were moving up the timetable, but there were other messages there that actually kind of worry me. First, they said the clock is activated, which means something is ticking down. I don't know. But they also found a gun by the USS was an intercept we provided. They said this is not a game.
Yeah.
The tech code went live, code signals clean, and then they said, we're moving up the timetable. But the one that really got me was @Jack thought he was protected. And I'm thinking he's talking about Kennedy.
Yep.
So, no sleep since drop, and this kind of scares me because this tells me that they might be trying to plan some type of an assassination or something. I don't know what you're reading into this or what you think this means, but that's what I'm getting out of this.
No, that's exactly what it is. First, they try to humiliate the man. They try to stop him from getting elected. That failed. Then they try to create these false collusions and false, criminality and implied criminality that they're trying to do, try to get him impeached. And that has failed. So the deep state is left with the only recourse, and this is why everybody should be praying for our president, is assassination. But again, Again, the deep state, again, are individuals who have walked for decades in a hall of mirrors. All they see is themselves. All their delusions are the things that are blinding them, and the mist of their own confusion is what's causing them to stumble. Now, here's the deal. The greatest jewel in the crown of any sort of national security play, the greatest jewel in the crown of any security apparatus is he who controls the NSA supercomputers. Now, there's been an absolute fumigation and clearing of the NSA and the DOJ of deep state actors. The NSA's massive supercomputer systems have been taken over and is right now controlled by the good guys. That's a reality. Okay, that's what's able to. That is the main thing that is able to save our country and save our president multiple times from these deep state actors. Now, I just want things to accelerate from we know who they are, we can hear them breathe, to we want to get them arrested already. There's no, and this is what I'm hoping that the good guys understand here. This is something I get. This doesn't end well. It is better to pull off the bandage and deal with the pain, and not worried about, oh my God, if we don't build a better narrative before we bust these people and arrest them, the whole country will have a meltdown. People will wind up in hospitals with mental breakdowns. Then so be it. The longer the deep state is allowed to run, and this is a problem, and folks, I'll tell you, Dave, and I'll tell you some of your listening audiences. Two days ago, and CJ can verify this, I broke down the entire deal of a specific Latvian bank. Okay, and CJ, when was that? That was Tuesday's broadcast. This Tuesday?
I think it was just yesterday, V.
Yeah, it was yesterday's broadcast. Tuesday's broadcast.
Yeah, yesterday was Tuesday.
Yeah,
yeah, you're correct.
You
Go ahead.
Don't worry about it, man. So yesterday, February the 20th, on the morning show, I broke down the entire connection between a Latvian bank, Ukrainian rocket technology, SpaceX telemetry, stolen NASA technology, and North Korea. I linked the whole thing together. The money laundering, the whole 9 yards, the shenanigans that were happening, and what happens, folks. To put it in a nutshell, you can go back and listen to that show, but to put it in a nutshell, the CIA has nukes. They have nuclear missiles. Their nuclear missiles are in North Korea. That's the scary part. So there's no, we should just, the American people will have a shock. Oh, they'll be so, they'll have mental breakdowns. No. Enough's enough. Rip the Band-Aid now. Arrest these guys. There's enough evidence. I mean, come on, freaking, what's his name? Jeffrey Epstein from the Lolita Island Express? That guy, that sycophant, dirty bastard? That perv, on purpose, who himself was a Mossad double agent, had recording video devices all over his house. Bill and Hillary, especially Bill, has been to that island multiple times, along with Prince Andrew, along with a whole bunch of elites. In other words, there's a great chance here, Dave, that the NSA has video evidence of these characters in nefarious, evil, and very heinous doing very heinous things. We have them dead to rights. Pull the video out. Bring these people into justice. I don't understand. I mean, I get, in 4chan and 8chan, they got the whole Q. Okay, QAnon, man, I love you. I love what you're doing. But I want more than just cryptic, musings of this and that. I'm getting tired of it already, Dave.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I also understand that, we want all this information to come out, and we're saying, you know what, let's just put it out there. But the deep state, they play dirty. They don't, I mean, look what they did with 9/11. They brought down a World Trade Center in front of everyone. They, there was a huge operation in this and many agendas associated with, but they were able to do this and they killed people and they didn't really care. And I think and this is my personal opinion, I think what they're worried about is if they start putting this stuff out there, just dumping it. Not that the people are going to have a very difficult time. I mean, look, when Trump was elected, people were screaming and yelling on the streets. They couldn't handle it. They had marches and things like that. I think what they're really worried about is the deep state doing something with maybe a tactical nuke, with maybe assassinating the president or something like that. Maybe this is why this message came out there, because maybe they are prepared to dump a lot of information, and they're getting the information that something is being planned right now, and this is why they're a little worried.
I hope, I hope you're right, and I hope that happens, because my whole thing is this: the deep state, in order for them to operate, they require a shroud of darkness. So if we're limiting the dissemination of truth to certain blogospheres and certain chans, these cryptic message boards like 4chan and 8chan, you're still allowing the deep state to act in darkness. You're enabling that shroud of darkness to continue. But if you pull that darkness back, then they can't act because they've been exposed. They will scurry like roaches. That's what's needed. I think it's dangerous. I think the more this is played out, the worse it's going to get, Dave. And that's why I'm worried about this whole little power war that's going on between these two factions.
No, I agree. CJ, what do you think about all this?
I mean, without a doubt, if we wouldn't have, and this is something that we talk about, several times, is the fact that the world we're living right now would be a lot different under a world with Hillary Clinton sitting in office, right? So, we support, Trump. We support the administration, and we're so thankful that so much has been exposed up to this point. But Dave, there's one simple word, and the word is the truth. Truth. And I think that's something that, even though so simple, I think it's something that we are all asking for. We're all asking for the truth regarding no matter what's transpired here. And so in the event, when you constantly delay and these things are happening, that pushes out the timeline for these events that are occurring. And when you look geopolitically, what's happening around us, why we are kind of, focused internally so much of what's happening, we're watching, China developing the One Belt, One Road initiative, really, pushing these things. And we have the neocons that are sitting there, having their Senate Intel committee hearings, talking about how Russia, China, all these countries are the enemies. Well, I think it's time that we have to pause and get internally focused on these things that are happening. Listen, whether Trump decides to fire Mueller today, tomorrow, the MSM is not going to give him any breaks. Nothing like this is going to occur. The truth is so simple, but yet so effective. And I think that's something that the people that elected Trump, the people that supported Trump, have been asking for. And we're well into a year into his administration. And it's time again, something I say repeatedly, that, that actions speak louder than words. We're ready for some of these arrests. We're ready for some of these things to happen. I'm really kind of over that the Americans can't handle the truth because, society is going to collapse. This is going to happen. All this fear mongering that affords them the opportunity to kick the can down the road. We've done that enough, Dave. It's time.
Yeah. I mean, the deep state's willing to play dirty. The libtards and the mainstream media are willing to play dirty. The commies are willing to play dirty. The Antifa, the fascists are willing to play dirty, but we're not. We want to play nice. All of a sudden, we're worried about the psychological impact that's going to happen on these Americans. It's preposterous, man. That's what's worrisome to me is when you look at some of these deep state actors. These guys would say, "Well, we can't release that because that's damaging for the American psyche. The average American won't be able to handle it." We can't. We need to move beyond that. And for the good guys to think that this is going to somehow damage Americans, or they need to build a air solid case. You guys have the recordings. You guys have the videos. You guys have the audio recording. You guys have the photographs. You guys have the documentation. You got guys, for the love of God, if Dave and I could go out there, and CJ and I and Dave, we could all go out there and spend, 15, 20 minutes researching, I could come up with enough probable cause to have these guys dead to rights in a court of law. And you're telling me that these guys can't do it? It's the most ridiculous thing in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I do believe that Trump and his administration and all those individuals working, they have all the information. They know it all. They know exactly what has been going down. And I don't think it's with the people. Yes, people are going to have a problem. I think they're more worried about what the deep state is going to do. And I understand your position. And believe me, I would love everything just to come out and just say, you know what, this is the truth. But look at the past when he started to come out with, when he first said Obama was spying. I mean, the corporate media still is, they're still the mouthpiece of the intelligence agencies. They're still the mouthpiece of the deep state, and they control what people are hearing right now. Even though a lot of people don't hear it, but you go into an airport, you go into a bus terminal, you go into a gym or anything like that, you always see CNN or MSNBC, or because they have contracts with all these places, so you just continually hear all this stuff. And I think they're worried about the deep state, where they will do something to the people of the country, something huge. And I think that's their biggest worry, because how do you explain on President Trump's watch, we had a nuclear missile or a nuclear explosion in the country. I mean, he's going to have to deal with that. I mean, it's almost like Hawaii. A lot of people think there was an actual incoming missile coming in and it was intercepted or whatever, maybe it broke apart, I don't know. And this was not a mistake. I mean, I don't think it was a mistake at all. I think it was something that actually did happen.
It was this. It's the CIA, aka the clowns in America. It was a missile they probably launched off a North Korean sub or anything. These guys have they have the back doors to all the telemetry on all of North Korea's missiles. They could launch them at will. They could steer them at will. Yeah, I believe that whole entire thing that happened in Hawaii was a real incoming missile. There's no doubt about it, in my head, at least.
So I mean, I think that's what they're really worried about. I think they're worried about. And I see from the QAnon, I wish Q would not speak in code. Just come out and just say it. Be a lot easier. But he just puts out all these different codes. I don't know why. Sometimes I think it is Trump and it's going through many different individuals, but it's all coming from him. I could be completely wrong on that.
Dave, one other thought real quick,
sure.
While we're talking about, these events and everything, that, one other, school of thought there is thinking about, if you listen to the Intelligence Committee and their hearing and them ratcheting up that China's the enemy, that Russia's the enemy. Also, the last thing that I want is for them to use a 9/11 event to push Trump into some type of conflict. So I think that's something else that we strongly have to consider.
Right.
These neocons is using maybe it's an infrastructure. Maybe it's the power grid going out for 10, 12 days. Maybe it's an attack on the financial system, shutting down the banks, some type of non-event that without a loss of life. But that's my concern. My concern is that if we don't, that's going to afford them more time to plan that out, because we know it's there. When you listen to almost every intelligent head that's there, whether it's the NSA, whether it's the CIA, DHS, they continue to push this narrative that China's enemy, that Russia's an enemy, and we have to do something. And the last thing that I want is this timeline to be pushed out, that they do plan that event to really pressure Trump. Because you imagine, Dave, if there's a 9/11 style event, kind of like how George W. Bush warranted that to go into the Middle East, and my gosh, we're still there. That's the last thing that I want, is some type of event that for like that to happen, that they push the American public into supporting and pressuring Donald Trump into some type of escalated event, an escalated war with China or Russia.
I think that event is already planned. I think it was planned because they thought Clinton was going to be president, and I think they were going to use that event to say that, these Russia, North Korea, whatever country it was, they were attacking us, either with a cyber attack, like you said. I think it's already planned. I just think that all they have to do is throw the switch and everything goes green, everything goes hot, and we're off and running.
Yeah.
I think they're playing a very fine line here on making sure they don't do that. And I think if they came out and they dumped everything, almost like when, they came out with the Pentagon with $2 trillion missing right on September 10th. And then on the 11th, all of a sudden there's other agendas associated with it, but all of a sudden the towers came down and that whole story went away. If they dump everything tomorrow, okay, everyone will see it on whoever picks it up and runs with it. The corporate media, most likely not. Maybe Fox would. But all of a sudden, the next day, we have a cyber attack, infrastructure's down, maybe an incoming missile. I mean, then what? Then what do we do?
You know, that's a very good point. That's a very good point, and that's why it's like it's not like we have these guys have a lot of time. He has 7 years left. That's it. Yeah. 7 years left, and then what? So if it stays in limbo, if it stays in a stalemate like it is now, or just this back and forth tit for tat, and the deep state somehow survives Trump after the 7 years, then what? You know, what do we do, right? Scary, man. It's real scary when you think about that.
I think in the back, this is my personal opinion when I'm looking at all this, I think what his strategy is the same strategy that Russia had with the Islamic State. Cut off their funding, cut off the money flowing into their system. And how do you do that? Well, they cut off the oil convoys, which they were selling the oil from Syria into Turkey with Erdogan and his son. The same thing here. Cut them off. They got the poppy fields. I believe in Afghanistan, the actual army out there, they're going after the Islamic State, the paid mercenaries, and they're shutting down the poppy fields. They did this whole thing with Pakistan to close the routes and stuff to Afghanistan. And I think what they're trying to do is flush that all out. I think they're doing it in Syria. And I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to break them down as far as they possibly can go and cut off a lot of their funding, their covert operational funding and things like that, and make it so they can't do anything. And I know that takes time, but I think that would be my strategy. I think that's what their strategy is right now. From everything that I'm looking at and everything that I see them doing, that looks like that might be the direction that that they're headed in, and that's what they've been doing. I mean, I could be completely off here, but that's what it looks like to me. And that's exactly what Russia did in Syria. They went in there and they said, oh, look at all this oil going over there. This is how they're getting funded. Let's just bomb that and take that all out, and we don't have to worry about it. And since they did that, there was no more funding. They were making no more money. I mean, yes, still covertly funds were coming in, but they were blocking all the different borders and things. They just surrounded them, and boom, eventually it all disappeared. I mean, there's still pockets here and there, but I think this is what they're trying to do.
You know, Russia had its deep state that worked against its country for so many decades. And that changed because you had a politician who had the balls to go in, you know, take names, kick down doors, ask questions, and hit so hard that it literally scared the bejesus out of these guys. And that's Vladimir Putin. And I think the same heavy-handed, iron fist approach needs to be done here. I mean, you got to the point where very powerful oligarchs. Let me explain to the audience: the Russian oligarchs that Putin jailed, killed, or ran for their lives. Okay, these were multi-billionaires. These are the types of oligarchs that would come here and shop American politicians. Okay, and buy them out. But they would shop deep staters here in the United States. These guys were running scared from Vladimir Putin. Scared, terrified, abject terror. Same thing needs to be done here. The difference between Russia and America is this: Russia has the will. We don't.
Yeah, I agree. It's like Iceland, where they went in and they got the bankers and they put them in jail. Yeah, for some reason
that can happen here. You know why? It would be bad for the American psyche. What would the American person think if we jail bankers? Oh my God, it'll be so psychologically traumatic.
Yeah, I mean that's what we're dealing with right now.
That's what we're dealing with.
Yeah,
I mean these things have been done. I mean, there are templates here. Iceland is a template. What happened in Russia post-Soviet Union is a template. What are we doing that's so different? We're not that different. We're not that unique. It's not a very precariously different situation. No. The same deep state that was in operation, the same Russian deep state that hijacked or took or commandeered, however way you want to put it, a K-129 Gulf sub, a Gulf II sub, okay, back in the late 60s. And then try to set off an roll it out to the South Pacific and try to launch an ICBM at Hawaii to have it blamed on China so the U.S. would go to war with China. And this happened Okay, that was a Russian deep state. It was at that time that I think it was I think I don't know if it was, I think it was Khrushchev at that time that was still the Soviet premier. When he found out, he was livid. Okay, and I don't know if it's Khrushchev or Brezhnev, but either one of them they were livid, and that's when the U.S. built the Glomar Explorer with Howard Hughes leading that whole entire project. It was the most expensive project ever created to go out and get the sub. It was a false flag by the Russian deep state. So they had a deep state that was doing the same nefarious, insane things because they're connected with the same globalists. This is no difference. Except they got the balls. We're I don't know where our balls are, Dave. I think it's on top of a refrigerator in a glass jar somewhere. And every so often, the American walks by and looks at it.
Yeah. CJ, what's your thoughts on this?
I will continue, Dave, to always remain optimistic. I mean, because, really, I don't think we have any other choice, right? So, for our families, for our friends. So I remain optimistic. I just want to see some clarity through this. And because there's so much information, so much disinformation that's created every day that we're looking at. And when I see, Dave, some of the actions, some of the things that are occurring that are real, they're kind of opposite of kind of what I envisioned. And it could be, again, we hear this 3D, 4D chess. So instead of the arrest being made, I'm watching a massive government expansion. I'm watching a candidate who championed that the stock market was rigged, the figures are rigged, and now he's taken ownership of that. I watched a candidate talked about that our debt is putting us at risk, and now watching that we're going to be potentially exceeding the debt by several trillions of dollars. I'm watching a massive expansion on U.S. military. In fact, they passed a budget for more military spending that was asked for. How are those reflective based upon my own thoughts, my own benchmarks? And I'm talking about me as an individual. And I think that's something that we have to ask. Each person needs to ask ourselves, and for your audience, how's that reflective upon what you thought things were going to be? Yet we still don't have any arrest. We don't have anything other than theories. And an indictment doesn't mean a conviction. Okay, it doesn't. So I need to see something a little bit more of substance. So I'm going to keep pressing. I'm not going to remain idle. I'm going to keep pressing this administration to do. We covered it yesterday, Dave. Yesterday we observed the administration come out and support Mitt Romney for Senate from Utah. I mean, you want to talk about a deep state player? You want to talk about a swamp creature? And now we have an administration that's supporting it just because it's the politically correct thing to do. Internally, I have a problem with that, Dave. But again, I do reflect back that things could be significantly different. But at the same time, I'm going to internalize things. I'm going to process them the way that I see them. I'm going to continue to remain optimistic. I think solutions based. And for your listeners, that's just so important right now to not get so caught up and fixated, because it's so easy to do, right? I mean, Dave, I know you spend countless hours researching. I know V and I do as well. It's so easy to get stuck. The other morning, V and I were talking, I was like, V, I got to shut down for the day. I'm like, my sensory things were off the chart with everything. So take time to pause to, make sure your family's okay, to check on them, to get your financial ducks in a row, be prepared for things, not to sit idly by why all this information is coming out. It's just so important to do that right now, Dave.
And I do believe that everything that is being done in the country right now with Trump and stuff, even though it seems kind of strange, I think there's always a reason behind it. And I mean, it's almost like when he came out and he was like, our nuclear button's bigger than Kim Jong-un, we're going to blast him. I think this was all play for the corporate media, for everything else. And behind the scenes, you had Russia, China, Trump all talking with South Korea. And actually, they kind of put one over on the deep state, because that freeze plan actually went into effect during the Olympics. The U.S. didn't, have the drills, and Kim Jong-un, he hasn't fired a missile, hasn't tested a nuclear weapon. So really, that freeze plan went into effect, and I don't think the deep state knew what was going on because he was so busy, giving them everything they wanted to hear. And I think sometimes that's, you're saying one thing, but you're really doing something behind the scenes. And I think he does that quite often.
I'm optimistic as well. I just hope that everything that's being done, there's a reason for it. I'm sure there is. I'm just losing patience, Dave. That's all it is.
No, I understand. I'm losing patience too. I just want the truth to come out. I mean, that's the biggest thing. Like CJ said, the truth, and you want the truth to come out. You want people to see not the propaganda truth, the real truth with, here are the facts, here's the paperwork, this is the signature from Obama, this is the signature from Clinton, look what they did, here's the trail of all the money, this is where it led up to. And you really can't argue that once that comes out that way. When you have facts and you have the truth, they can use propaganda all they want, but it falls apart.
Exactly correct.
CJV, I really appreciate you coming on the X22 Report Spotlight. Once again, how can everyone see your work?
Sure, go to roguemoney.net. You could also follow us on Twitter at The Rogue Money, and check out Rogue Money on YouTube, and also check out some of the services we got. I mean, anybody's interested in cryptocurrencies and whatnot, we have thecryptoschool.io, thecryptoschool.io. We have an amazing course. We have some amazing faculty members there. We'll teach you how to trade. We'll teach you how to use the best wallets, how to use the exchanges, how to move from crypto to fiat and back. And if you want to learn how to trade, I mean, we got people who've lost their jobs and now, basically paying their bills, their rents, their mortgages, their houses, their cars, and putting their kids through school just by trading cryptocurrencies. And if you want to learn how to do that, you could check us out again, roguemoney.net, as well as thecryptoschool.io. That's our main predominant service. And we also have remaincom.net, which is our, financial, if anybody that needs their credit repaired, you need to get out of debt, or you got the collectors hounding you and you want to get the heck out. Well, call us. Don't freak out. remaincom.net. Those are just some of the services we offer, Dave.
All right, great. Thank you once again for being on the Spotlight. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, Dave. It's our pleasure.
Thank you, Dave.